Good morning. I'm going live. It is Memorial Day, so I want to start off by saying my sympathies goes out to anybody who has ever been affected by anybody in a place of war. It's a terrible thing, and it's a tough old place to start. So yeah. So I want to start with that. It's super important. On startup side, it never goes away. It's always really important. I'm going to have an amazing person who's going to be joining us this morning, Swati. And we're going to go and we're going to dig deep into methodologies that's going to help you grow your business. Now, as always, what I do is at the very beginning of the show, I run through things that have happened last week that will hopefully help founders get an idea as to how you can help drive your business forward. They will be very strong activities that have happened within Expert Dojo companies that help Expert Dojo companies grow faster. And you learn from these things. And so, by osmosis, with the 300 companies or so that we have investments into, you get to see the growth hacking that's happening and it's useful. And you take one of those things away and it's really good. Then, after that, immediately after that, I am going to bring in Swati from one of our phenomenal companies. She's going to talk about how she's used communication tools to be able to propel her business to huge levels. So we're talking like 200% growth year on year. And whether you're an investor looking at this and you think, wow, I actually want to meet with this company and talk to it, that's good. If you're a founder who's thinking, well, I want to grow at 200% growth, well, you're going to get a ton of info on actually how this happens, because Swati's going to share with you. Both of you are going to get huge benefit from it. Now, then I'm going to finish with an epic insight, which is the epic insight from what we've taken from Swati, and also from something that I really wanted to bring into the call. Now, I know some of you folks are on LinkedIn, some of you folks are in different places. Wherever you are welcome, and the only objective is that you walk away on a Monday morning feeling empowered to be able to drive the day forward. I will always be here, no matter if it's Memorial Day or if it's Christmas Day or if it's the 4th of July or any other day. I will always be here because this startup never stops, and neither do your requirements and your needs and everything else, right? So let me talk a little bit about last week and some of the things that happened, both with the companies and with myself, that will give you some lessons to take away from it. So, number one, I spent most of the week on a red eye. I actually went to there was a conference over in St. Pete's in Florida, and then there was a conference down in San Diego, and I flew down to the conference on a Wednesday night, and I got in there on a Thursday morning, and I did the conference all day with my good friend Scott over at Black Dock Ventures, and then on the Thursday night, I flew from St. Pete's and I arrived in San Diego on the Friday morning. Actually, if I think about it, on the Wednesday evening, we had an event over here, which I was speaking on the panels for deep technology in Web3. What does this all say? Look, I may be the founder of Expert Dojo, and everybody may feel, well, as a founder of a company, our job is to go out fundraising, or our job is to make sure that we drive our employees and we do all those things. You cannot sit behind your desk. Nobody can. And it doesn't matter if it's me or if it's you or if it's anybody else out there. The only person that you have right at the beginning to be the voice of your company is you. And you've heard me say this in previous ones before. I truly believe you need to build your lovable product before you can start working on that Horizon 3 product. And the Horizon 3 product is we're going to change the world. And the world will literally never be the same again after this Horizon 3 product comes out. But you have to start with your lovable product before you can understand your customer well enough to be able to work on that Horizon 3 product. Now, as you are doing that, remember what I said last week about threading through, building domain awareness to get to domain authority, to get to domain domination. The only way you can thread through domain awareness, domain authority, domain domination is putting yourself out there. You cannot do it by sitting in your room doing emails all day, not being in front of the world. You can't do it by having other people hopefully go to places. You have got to find epic productions that you can create to make sure that you're there. Now, for me, That was about having Expert Dojo, which was our epic production years ago that allowed us to have multiple events that we have at this place. On Wednesday evening, there was 100 people all watching the panel that I was on and all watching the next panel. And there were other people there as well, but that was me being out in the world. On the Thursday, when I was in St. Petersburg in Florida, there was 200, 250 people, all exactly the same thing. And I was there very much front of center. On the Friday, when I was in San Diego, it was the same again. And look, this stuff doesn't cost very much money. The conferences cost nothing if you're going to be speaking there. You can get a flight most places if you book it in advance for $200, $250. So this is not a cost issue. It is an allocation of time issue. But you don't have a choice at the beginning. Remember, in your pitch deck, it says, we will topple like this huge company here who are like the people who actually own this entire space. But you're not really going to topple them if you're going to be in your bedroom all the time, right? You have to go out there and you got to get out to the world. So I implore every founder, whether you are an extrovert and maybe you're not quite measuring the amount of people you're in front of, if you're an introvert and you're possibly not leaving your room and going out to places, you don't have a choice, don't have a choice, don't have a choice. You have to get to domain domination. And domain domination, the least expensive and most productive way to get there is to be in front of as many people as you possibly can. And so look at your calendar, everybody, and say, how much am I putting myself in front of my desired audience at this time? How many people am I outreaching to? How many conferences am I outreaching to? How many podcasts am I outreaching to? How many webinars am I doing? How many LinkedIn Lives, like what I'm doing here, am I doing? You have to do this. And it can't just be once. You can't just do it once and then tell your mom that you did like a really great job, but you put yourself out in the world. You have to do it continually. And by the way, if you have two co-founders, you pick the one of you who's the best at doing it. And then the other one, you focus on the other things you have to do. And I know as founders, you're going to say to me, but Brian, I have to spend 100% of my time fundraising. I have to spend 100% of my time working to find new customers. I have to spend 100% of my time engaging with the existing customers that I have. And now you're telling me I have to spend 100% of my time amplifying my voice out in the world. That's exactly what you have to do. And this is why I had actually on one of the panels, I had this really interesting conversation with one of the guys from Techstars, and he was a lovely guy. And he was on the panel. He's like, accelerators are really important and really good. And we have this thing where we get founders together and they like help each other and they talk out their problems. I'm like, fuck that. That's a waste of time. Because founders need to move quickly. What they don't need is a bunch of other people who are not moving fast enough so that they can waste more time talking about like all of the woes in their life. Like the only thing that saves any of us, me as a VC, you as a founder of a product or a company or a technology, the only thing is hitting success quicker, right? Somebody feeling sorry for us while we're poor longer does not help. And so to hit success quicker, you got to go hard. And that means like, I remember, I'm going to bring Swati on in 1 second, but I remember one of the first times I saw her, she was in her bedroom and she has like all of her targets and everything on the wall, which I thought was like most epic thing in the world, period. Because that is someone who knows, they know that they have to like eat, live, breathe, wake up, everything, start up, because the quicker success comes, the quicker pressure leaves. Money pressure is the worst pressure of all pressures. Look, if you or I or everybody else fails because we did a shitty logistics job or because our customer stopped loving our products, and like it's almost a relief in some way, right? But if we lose because we didn't have enough money, we ran out of money, we got choked out with the oxygen to run our business, it is the saddest thing in the world because we took something which could have been really good and we didn't let it become really good. Okay. I'm going to shut up. That is like everything from the previous week. I'm going to bring into the call. We are going to talk about success. We're going to talk about like 200% growth. And you're the queen of that. And we invested in you.
Thank you so much, Brian. I'm humbled.
You shouldn't be humble. I'm humbled because we invested in you. Well, first of all, I say we. I invested in you. And so when I invested in you through Expert Dojo at the beginning, I knew a couple of things, right? This is why this is such a great conversation, right? And I want to talk about Better Meal, and I'm going to let you actually. I want to give a little bit of an intro as to why this is incredibly important and why like this jump in growth is like something that every entrepreneur should be listening to right now. The other reason you should be listening to it is this is not me talking to a founder who has like sold her unicorn and moved on to other things and is reminiscing about the beautiful times when she was a founder and things was hard. Like this is the middle of battle. Like you have this right in the middle of the most difficult. So it's wonderful because you're getting it when it's fresh and it's relevant and it's now for you. And then Swati will go into a little bit about what Better Meal is and how it works and maybe the concept behind it. And then we're going to talk about growth, growth, growth. And what I want people to realize is not just the channel that she's working from, but the journey to get to that channel. So let me talk first of all from an investor's perspective. I'm going to take off my growth hacking hat, put on my investor hat, and say, when I first saw Swati at the beginning, like what was it that made me want to invest in a company which I don't think had any revenue at the time? It might have had incy bit of revenue, but it had her, right? And I remember when we were first on the call and Genevieve brought me on, and I thought, wow, okay, first of all, I see it in her eyes. Like this is execution's a funny thing. It's really hard to describe what you see in someone's eyes up front. Swati has it, I have it, right? It doesn't mean that we're guaranteed success, but it means like we'll die trying. And you can see it. You know when you're around these people that you have. And so I saw that straight away. It was like super easy. And I was like, she's amazing. Number two, actually behind then the execution power, there's a certain amount of emotional intelligence that's required. It's really funny. Like emotional intelligence is a great book, EQ, which is the difference between IQ and EQ. And there's a lot of very, very smart people out there. But the thing about running an early stage startup and building out a product, which has not become the beautiful thing it's going to become, is that it requires EQ much more than it requires IQ. Like you kind of need the IQ to be in the game, but if you don't have the EQ, you can't read the signals that tell you what you need to change because they're not logical. None of this stuff is logical. If this stuff was logical, half the companies that would be billion-dollar companies would not be billion-dollar companies, right? Half the stuff that consumers would like, they would hate. And so it's about being able to read the signals all the way through. And that takes a tremendous amount of EQ. And as an investor, it is possible to read EQ in a founder because you see how they have already reacted to the very turbulent way that a company starts and builds and grows, right? The third factor for me was as I looked at how she was building the company and what she was doing, I saw this amazing focus on community. And even at the beginning, Swati said to me, no, the objective here is not just to sell a product. The objective here is to serve a community. And you have to serve a community before you can build a community. And then after you build a community, then what happens is you don't have to sell a product. What happens is you bring a product in, and then that product becomes the thing that actually helps you grow, right? And so I was like, oh, that's kind of interesting. And then the final thing was the product itself. And Better Meal AI for me was like such a great product because it allowed me to be able to then see something that was a fundamental problem in the world. So think about the four areas that I went through as an investor. And founders, you should all see this. And this was for a company that didn't have tons of revenue, but it had a founder who had proven record of execution, a founder who had very strong EQ in my mind, a founder who had a absolute focus stroke obsession on building out a community that serves the community first rather than selling the product, and a founder which absolutely showed that you had a product which the world desperately needed. So that's all you, Swati. So I saw that. So that to me was like easy for me to say, okay, the investment is going to be there, but that's only a small amount of investment. And there is a monster difference between a small amount of investment and actually being able to then take that to massive scale. So would you share with us, first of all, what Better Meal AI does? And then talk to me a little bit about maybe the comments I made about those four areas, which me as an investor, it kind of made it a no-brainer for me to invest. And then we're going to start talking about growth hacking. But I think everybody will have good context at that stage.
Sure. Thank you so much, Brian. I'm so happy to talk about the journey. I mean, it just feels like yesterday, but it's almost like 3.5 years since we started Better Me. But it's been like a longer journey than 3.5 years because of the clinical
Hey, and
studies, which I'm gonna get in it.
Swati, um, I think we're going to have to do something here because the signal is so bad. It's killer.
Oh,
So maybe you can jump out and jump back on another signal, or if not, I'll run through it and then we get you back in on a different thing. But it's like we hear every third word.
okay, sure. I can just join back if that helps.
Well, yeah. Okay, let's. Yeah, and what we might do is maybe even afterwards, like just check your internet if you can, and then what I'll
Yeah.
do is if we can't do it, then I'll talk about the story, and then we'll bring you back in next week again. But maybe just check your internet, make sure you're okay, and then jump back in. Okay, and then I'm gonna talk a little bit about you.
Sure. I can rejoin and see the connection here.
Okay, good on you. Thank you.
Yeah.
Okay, so just going back into like what I went through with Swati, for me as an investor, all of these things, this is why, like for me as an investor, it's so important looking at, and you as a founder, I want you to say to yourself, of the areas that I went through with Swati there, do you show a proven execution power? And by the way, execution is not execution with investors. Anybody can do execution with investors. I outreached to you. I did a pretty deck for you. I made sure the thing looked nice for you. And actually, 2 years ago, that was okay. But today, it's not okay. Today, execution means that you show that the only people that are important to you, which are your customers, are the one that you execute with. Right now, so how are you demonstrating that to your investors? Are you continually just sending out a deck to your investor talking about what you're doing in the future? Are you speaking to your execution power? And so you might say to me, Brian, and by the way, I'm going to throw chat in here. So if anybody has, oh, you can hear Swati. Okay, cool, Charles. I'll let her come back in again. Maybe it's just my end. So if we're talking about execution power, I'll let Charles. You'll be my man. Who's going to let me know? Swati,
Can you hear me okay?
I hear you fine. Thank you. Thank you for coming back in. And Charles has said he said he can hear you as well, which is wonderful. And so I was just mentioning one thing to everybody here, which is that like execution is something which is entirely focused. It's always focused on the actual execution power of what you're doing with your customers. And that's what gets demonstrated. So talk to us a little bit about, for you, first of all, Better Meal AI, and then dig into like what you execution, then community, then EQ, then we're going to go into the product itself. Okay, really, can everybody hear her? Because she keeps she keeps jumping out. Okay, so this is we'll bring her back in. We'll bring her back in a second. Okay, so let's try one more time. We're going to go one more time, and if not, then we're going to do this. We're going to do this bad boy again. Okay, we're going to try one more time, Swati.
Yeah.
One more time, and then that's it. We're
Okay.
going to give it one more go, and then we got to let you go.
Sure. I hope you can hear me okay. The
Oh,
internet
yeah.
seems fine here. I'm not sure what's happening, but yeah.
Okay, that's okay. That's okay. Here's what we're going to do. You heard what I said, right? So we're going to jump back into those 4 points. So
Yes.
let's see
Yes,
what happens
absolutely.
on those. Okay.
Okay. Um, I can get started about what better meal is here, and then go about those 4 points that you discussed really well. So, better meal helps patients heal conditions such as type 2 diabetes, hyper and hypo gastrointestinal and autoimmune, and women's menstrual health issues. And we are the world's first therapeutic platform to detect gut health through basic blood tests without dependency on any gut test kits. So what we do here is we provide metabolome signature program that addresses the root cause of gut health through metabolomics, microbiome analysis, and biomarkers analyzed through this basic blood tests. And we also match the microbiomes with the active compounds in food and use this knowledge to help heal all these conditions. So that's about Better Meal. It's been a long journey so far. We started clinical studies in 2019, and the pandemic hit, where I had to travel to India to actually perform the clinical studies. But pandemic hit. But it was luck in disguise, we can say, because we had very minimal number of participants. We ended up having 500K participants just because the pandemic hit, and all the clinical studies was remote at that point of time. It was, again, like we were talking about the EQ part. It was pretty challenging time because, like, we all had very little bit of sleep. And my co-founder, she is from London, and she was in a different time zone. I'm in a different time zone, and of course the clinical studies and the team was in a different time zone. So all of us collaborating and getting this far, where we had the clinical study, the results, maintaining of all the database, like doing all the data analysis. I the algorithm. So it was a pretty challenging pandemic, that we did all this, and it definitely required a very high EQ, because a lot of decisions was taken intuitively, and if we had one decision wrong, we wouldn't have been where we are today. So
Yeah.
it was a lot of challenge. Can you hear me okay?
It is cutting. It is cutting a little bit. Here's what we're gonna do. I'm gonna bring you back next week. Okay, we're gonna get you on a good internet connection, and I'm gonna bring you back next week. Okay, and that
Okay.
way, that because I can talk a little bit about this, and I'm gonna bring you back next week, and we're gonna talk about it because I want to
Okay.
make sure everybody gets the story from you properly. Okay,
Okay. Yeah, sure. I'm so sorry. I'm
you're
not sure what happened with the.
okay. You're okay. You jump. We'll get you back next week. Don't worry.
Sure.
Um,
Okay. Okay, Brian.
So, look, for everyone who's listening, I see Jack there, I see Charles there, I see Jim, and everybody else. I think what's there we go. I gotta push it right there. And so for everybody who's listening, let's go back because look on Swati, there's a great story here. It's such a good story on like how she grew her WhatsApp and what that looks like, and how she's got 200% growth on the back of that. And I really want you to get this story. But today, here's what we're going to do. Rather than kind of put you through trying to hear her in kind of a half good way or maybe not such a great way, is I want to focus on the piece that I was speaking about at the beginning, which is like putting yourself out there on podcasts and putting yourself out there on conferences and making sure you're out in the world. Um, and I have, and as I said, I see Charles, I see Jim, I see a bunch of other folks here. Hit me with questions, please, for anything that you have about like how you can do this, because it is centrally the most important thing that you can do. If you don't build up your domain dominance, nobody's going to know you. And if nobody knows you, you can't build a unicorn. And if you're trying to build a unicorn just by doing it through Facebook ads or by LinkedIn ads, it's not going to work. Like you're not going to be able to build it because it's too expensive. You have to do it by making sure people see you. And so I want to cover like two things on this space that I do specifically that work for me, but you may want to do it yourself slightly differently, right? The first thing I do is, and then what I'm going to do is I'm going to come back to my epic insight actually at the end of this is going to speak directly to what Swati was actually speaking about. So it gives you a really good feel for that as well. Okay. So first of all, what are the two things that I do to build domain dominance? Number one, I'm everywhere. And the only way you can be everywhere is to be reaching out to everybody. So there's hardly a conference that happens anywhere that we don't reach out to. Hardly anywhere, right? And there's hardly a podcast. I don't think we've done it this month, but like before, there's hardly a podcast we don't reach out to. And I remember like the first time when I started doing this, and on like today, I've kind of reached this level of domain authority because I've worked with so many of our companies and invested in so many companies, and I've literally seen so much pattern matching that I feel like I've seen and heard and done enough, both on building the dojo and being around folks, to be able to share some of that knowledge. But that jump to domain dominance requires doubling and tripling down of everything that I've done before this. And so one of the things I'm going to talk about next week is what we do in Austin this week. And so the Web3 space is very, very different group of investors and founders than the Web2 space. And so we know everybody in Web2, but we don't know everybody in Web3. And so consensus is happening next week. So what are we doing in consensus? Are we getting a booth? No, too expensive, too small, too insignificant, right? Are we going to sponsor something else? No, too expensive, too insignificant. I don't want to be like a logo on the bottom of the thing. No, we got our own venue, our own place. We launched a side event. We put it up on the side events in Austin in consensus. You know how many people we have coming? 700 people so far. You know what it's going to cost us? Probably nothing, because it's going to be easy peasy to be able to get a few sponsors to cover it. But even without sponsors, I think it'll probably cost about $7,000. And that is to get a venue, to get comedians, to get a DJ, and to have, I think, 150 drinks included in the venue. $7,000 or $8,000. What are you going to get for that? Nothing. And we'll have it covered by sponsors. But now 700 people to 1,000 people in the space will see the biggest and best event that's happening in the whole space is going to be ours. Who's ours? Expert Dojo. Wow. Who are Expert Dojo? Oh my gosh, that must be Crypto Dojo. Wow, these guys must be huge. Oh, I should know these people. Oh, if I'm an investor, I should be deal flowing with them. Oh, if I'm a founder, I should be going to them. Wow. Expert Dojo are dope. Why? No particular reason. We created it. So you got to do this stuff yourself. You have to. Money is not a reason for it. It really isn't. And time really isn't a reason for it. It's so easy to arrange this stuff. Like we do this in our sleep. So it's super easy. So here's my request. And then I want to jump into what Jack and there's another really good point in here as well. So you got to actually make the effort. You just got to make the effort. Like you got to go out and you got to speak there. Now, the second thing that I do is, generally speaking, and it's just me, right? And I genuinely do it from a place of wanting to have a conversation worth having. But I will pretty much always pick a fight. And I'll pick a fight with something that I think is, I don't know, maybe it's unjust, maybe it's not really, maybe it's people being bland with the audience, and maybe it's something that I disagree with, but I'll pretty much always pick a fight. And even if I'm speaking on my own, I'll pick a fight with me, or I'll pick a fight with the status quo, because I want to have a conversation worth having, right? But that's my brand, right? And I'll bring it from a place of humility. So I'll be like, so for example, I when I was at San Diego, I spoke about the fact that I made a mistake with venture capital. I used to call it a Ponzi scheme before, because just VCs find the breadcrumbs being given by other VCs, and the great companies don't break through. It's just the companies that know people are privileged, or go to the right schools, or mommy and daddy is, in the right venture capital fund. And then I'm like, hey, I apologize. It's not actually a Ponzi scheme. It's a pyramid scheme. Because a Ponzi scheme is generally one person, right? Pyramid scheme is lots of people. And so I started out the talk in San Diego on that exact principle. But then I anchored the talk in 3 or 4 areas. The beginning it said that, and then it said, this is why. And then I established my credibility with the 300 companies that I had. So I said, hey, I'm somebody that you should listen to only because of this. And then I said, but it doesn't have to be like this. You don't have to lose. You can win. And the way you win is focusing on growth, on aligned greed. And so that's my personal brand. What I'm not going to do is the same damn thing that the other 10,000 VCs talk about. Like, what do I want to do that for? I can't build domain dominance by doing that. And so that's me. That's my 2-step. Step 1, outreach, 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 outreach. Never stop outreaching. Podcasts, webinars, conferences, do them ourselves, whatever it is. Some of them would be epic and amazing. Some of them would be not so amazing. Whichever it is, it's okay. You got to do it, right? And then the second thing is say something worth saying. You don't have to pick a fight. I like picking fight. I'm Irish. Irish in me, right? And say, but you don't have to pick a fight. You can just be nice to people. Okay, so I want to bring up, let's see what Jack's got to say. Good to see you, Jack. I was invited to speak in a panel, but one of our competitors was on the panel. We haven't even started building yet. So look, that's a personal thing for you. I love speaking on, I love putting myself on panels. I love speaking in front of people who could be competitors. Um, I take a very different opinion on I don't know if it's very different. Look, there are certain things that people are building you have to be careful of. You don't want to let people know all of the proprietary information that you have. Me personally, I share all of our proprietary information at the accelerator with any other accelerator that is willing to listen. And that's for two reasons. One, because I serve startups. I don't really serve me. Actually, there's like four reasons, right? One, I serve startups. And the more people that can find out about the fact that growth is tremendously important for early stage startups, and we as accelerators should be providing more of it, the better it is for founders. Number two, all accelerators should make money. So it's like, how much money can you spend, for God's sake? So I can afford to be helpful. Number three, and I actually think in a weird way, I think number three is more important even than number one and number two, is that I need to keep improving. Expert Dojo haven't got it worked out. We just are in getting better and better and better, right? And I have to keep improving. The only way I can keep improving is by putting pressure on myself, by giving away everything we've learned up to this point. I actually find that really good. The final point, which I think is just a standard VC point that brings out, but it's worth mentioning, is we don't fail because people copy our products generally. It's hardly ever that happens. It's only in super deep tech. And even in super deep tech, they can't copy great developers. I believe we fail because of lack of execution. And sometimes my point number three actually forces great execution rather than anything else. So for me, Jack, I know you, I know what you're doing. I would still jump on a panel. Why not? Build relationships with your competitors. You never know. May end up working together. They may end up doing a hire at the beginning where you end up taking a piece of them. Heck, you may end up stealing their people away. And you don't even have to share any of the proprietary information about what you're doing. I always take an opportunity to speak. I'll speak anywhere. Listen, I'll speak at a bar mitzvah if they'll let me talk about early stage founders and early stage startup. Okay. But I respect like people who make the choice, but please don't let your opportunities in early stage dominance be taken away by your reticence with people, copying what you're doing. Just don't do it. I see, if I'm going to say there's one founder that fails because somebody copied, there's 1,000 founders that fail because they didn't get it executed properly enough. Okay. Who do we have here? When you say domain dominance, when we get out there, would you be more specific about what you recommend we do for the domain dominance to communicate our message? Like, take the thing we're doing in Austin. Here's what we did. Consensus is happening in Austin. I'm going to back into them all because I can give you these three examples for this past week are three very different examples. And the one we're doing at Consensus in Austin is also very different, but they're super aggressive and extremely proactive. So Austin, we were only a week away from doing Austin. We knew that a sponsorship was going to be a waste of money. We knew that it was $2,000 to go to the conference, and all we were going to do is just walk around the damn place. We knew what we wanted. We wanted to do three things, right? We had it outlined beforehand. In third place, but still important, but a bronze medal was we wanted to build relationships with 20 or 30 really big people in the space, right? I already know like 10, but if I want to dominate, I need to know 30 more, right? Big people, huge people. And I needed them to want to speak to Brian. And honestly, there's no reason for them to want to speak to me. So that actually wasn't even that easy to do. Number two, which was the silver medal, I wanted to make sure that we took one of our companies, which was, and actually, number two and number one are actually very close to each other. I wanted to make sure we took one of our companies, which is GeoJam, who I believe are amazing, and I believe they have a phenomenal token. I wanted to make sure we put them in a position of absolute authority. And so we wanted to create an event, an epic production that made them the star of the show, kind of like a musical where they are the Lion King, right? But we needed to create a production, something so epic that it would put them as the star of the show. And then the final thing that we wanted to do is we will be launching something very huge in the future, but it's not ready yet. And I don't mean like we're afraid to bring it out. It's not ready to be presented because we need to have more pieces put behind it. So I wanted to start a whisper campaign with enough people so we can do it. So they were the objectives. You have to have an objective to something that you're doing, right? So then we're like, okay, now we have the objectives. How do we do it? Sponsorship ain't going to do it. Booth ain't going to do it. Reaching out to people definitely is not going to do it. Going to other people's side events is like, okay, but it's not going to do any of those three things, right? I'm just going to be like another schmuck of 20, 30,000 schmucks going around the place. So we rented like one of the biggest locations in Austin, which was only a couple of $1,000, super cheap. And it holds 1,500 people. Amazing. And we can get a DJ, which is thrown in for it as well. Amazing. Proper Brian, Irish, like bootstrap your way through it style. So we booked it. Then I called a bunch of comedians. Great comedians. Comedians are funny, right? We need funny. And talked about like, how do we laugh about crypto and laughed about people in crypto. And so I got those guys as well. You get comedians for like $100, like great comedians, really amazing people to bring out as well. So now we have comedians and we have a DJ. And then, of course, our company GeoJam got massively inspired. So they said, hey, we're going to bring and we're going to have a secret event inside the secret event because they create experiences, right? And we wanted to get those experiences to go to all of the crypto people because that's where they live. And so they arranged this amazing event for like 20, 30 people, which allowed us to satisfy number one or number two that we had on that list as well. So you understand, it doesn't have to cost money. It costs creativity. And I actually think it's kind of a currency. It's not even a cost. It's fun to arrange this thing. And so I'll let you know how it gets on next week. But our intention behind it was don't spend a lot of money, have the whole thing paid for, which it will be. We'll get a sponsor or two to cover 80% of it, if not 100% of it, including flights and everything going out there. And we will achieve, hopefully, all three of the things we wanted to do. Now, for the ones I did this, and you can ask any questions that you have in there, but like about that event. But for the ones we did like this past week, or that I did this past week, on the Friday in San Diego, I did a solo speaking. Why did I want to do that? What was my objective there? I want to make sure that everybody sees that Expert Dojo are not just a VC. We have growth hacking built in, which is tremendously important for the founders that come on. And Swati, you'll hear her next week. She's an animal. She's so good. Like I loved her at the beginning and I love her now even more than I did back then. But like there's a very specific methodology that we go through as growth hackers. And I wanted to get that message out, but in a very stark way. But I also did a panel as well. And there was 4 other people on the panel. And I made very incendiary remarks to all people while still being respectful to who they are, right? And so I just want to be remembered. Like there was a, I don't watch much Netflix, but I did last night, and there's a show about a real estate guy who I'm pretty sure must be Trump. And there's a moment in the show and he's like, you know, I just want to be remembered. That's it. Like, I want to be the guy who actually made a dent in something. And so all of us want to be the guy or the gal who made a dent in something. Otherwise, why are we doing early stage startup? And so whether it's on a panel speaking with other people, as I said, don't take my brand, use your own brand, build your own brand for whatever works for you. For me, it works because it comes from a place of authenticity. I'm not going to pick a fight for the sake of picking a fight, and I'm not going to say something that I don't believe. But I sure as hell will not hold back on what I believe if I've chosen this place of early stage creative founding startup. And then, okay, day before, previous events, Scott over in Black Dog Ventures is a friend of mine. So I knew that there were dozens of other investors in that group. And I knew that the audience were there as well. So I knew I could get all of their contact details. They were all going to be on my list. Now, those investors are my investors, as well as Scott's investors. The founders are my founders as well, which means I now have direct access to them with Scott as well. Like, it's really powerful because it's the power of partnerships. You understand? Like, again, it's a different outcome, but all of the outcomes are very specifically thought through. And while we were on a panel here on the Wednesday night, two panels in a row, one on Web3, one on gaming, I was establishing my domain expertise in gaming and Web3. Again, different requirement as well. Again, so just all of you, if you look at it like this, first of all, you need to tether from where you are today, from a traction perspective, a trajectory perspective with your customer, to where you need to be at a Series A. Okay, maybe you're at 10 grand a month right now and you need to get to $200,000 a month. Whatever that number is at a Series A, that's what you need to be building your way towards. That's why you're doing this. Like, you're not just building out this domain dominance just because you're bored and you want people to hear who you are. It's because you want a lower cost of customer acquisition, because people will be more attuned to buying quicker, cheaper, more often from you because they know who you are. Okay, but you want to build it. And so as you're building out your tethering of where you are today to where your Series A is, as you're building out your relationship with your customers and what that looks like, you want to make sure that you're seeing out there on the stage and you build the objectives in, which are the right objectives for you. And then after you're creating your epic productions, your epic events, which can be anything. It could be writing a book. It could be, arranging a conference yourself. They can be doing podcasts, but they have to be significant enough to tie into a potential outcome. Then when you're doing that, just measure the outcome afterwards. I'm going to measure hours based on Austin, and it would be specifically based on how well our company does. If GeoJam goes through the roof, then it's because we helped drive it that way, because we created an epic production, which actually is way beyond this event. The event is just one small thing that we're doing. Okay? It's fun, right? It's really fun. And by the way, there is also a really wonderful thing about, like, why do I do these LinkedIn things? I've always reveled in helping founders. But LinkedIn Live allows me to go wider. YouTube allows me to go wider. Being able to put it on our website allows me to go wider. All these things are super powerful for me to be able to push it beyond. So the communication around the epic productions become really powerful for you as well. Okay, awesome. What else have we gotten here? Okay, so a couple of other comments. Let's see. Domain dominance. We covered that. Thank you, Jack. I appreciate that, buddy. Jim, what do you got to say, Jim? I agree. Jump on the panel. 90% of I'm there. Life goes so fast. I'm like sitting there the other day talking about, I remember only moments ago I was just a wee whippersnapper, and now look at me. I'm not wee anymore, and I'm definitely not a whippersnapper. It just goes fast. And I don't have a single regret speaking on a single stage or a single podcast about a single thing I ever said, even if it was dumbass stuff. I don't have a single regret, because I cannot progress moving forward if I don't have that stuff in place. So it's powerful stuff. Okay, good. I like this. Okay, Mohammed, what you got here? Let's bring you up. Yeah, awesome. Thank you, man. I appreciate it. Look, I try and share what I see and what I do and what it's like here. And for me, although I intended to talk about Swati today, because, like, genuinely, when you come on, literally she's growing at 200% every single year. She'll hit like well over $100,000 this year, and it's all because of WhatsApp. And so I want you to understand and hear about WhatsApp. So it's cool. But actually, the fact that we could talk about building your domain dominance for more time than just a couple of seconds before we jumped into her is a good thing, because what I'm hoping is everybody's going to get off today. Let me tell you the kind of things I'm thinking of in the future for domain dominance. A documentary. We get our best founders on there and we start showcasing how amazing they are. Domain dominance. A book. Domain dominance. Hell, you ain't even going to imagine what we're going to create over in Token 2024, Token 2049 in Singapore. I haven't even done the one in Austin yet, and I'm planning out the one over in Singapore. You know how much bandwidth they require? Like this much. like this much. Like this stuff is all done for us through other things. But just ask yourself, am I building my startup like this? Or am I building like this with one epic production after another? And if you want proof of any of this, all you have to do is go back to the internet marketing greats of the 70s. Look what Tony Robbins did. How many other folks like Tony Robbins are out there? Literally, if you watch a Tony Robbins doing one of his like 30,000, 50,000 people coming to a place, it is a thing of art. Actually, I wish I could remember the guy who's the mindful guy who does it down, and he just did one down in San Diego or Cancun or somewhere. There's 5,000 people go to it. They charge, I think, between $3,000 and $5,000 for everybody to actually to go to this thing. It sells out in about 2 to 3 minutes. The entire thing sells out in 2 to 3 minutes because they understand. They understand what epic productions are. They understand that there's a sequence to building your personal brand. There's a sequence to building your business brand. Again, I just want to underline the reason why I focus so hard. If this was 10 years ago, I wouldn't bother you with any of this stuff. I would say to everybody, just spend money on Facebook or Google, or if it was 20 years ago, I'd be like, Ask Jeeves or like Yahoo or something else random that was out back in those times because they worked. They were fine. There was hardly any businesses. There was still like 6 billion people back in those days, and there was hardly any businesses. Like if you were on the internet there, I don't care what you're selling. If you're selling soap, you are selling soap all day long and making a ton of money from it. But today it doesn't work anymore. It doesn't work. It's broken. It's gone, right? So you got to do something different. And so that's why I'm leaning back into the internet greats. The internet greats would not dream. Like, look, life coaching for me is like, okay, I don't know that I want someone with a train wreck of a life to teach me how not to have a train wreck of a life. But I'm talking about the marketing of that life coach. Like, it's pretty brilliant, right? And so they all do the same thing. They go out, they do the speaking circuit, they network like crazy. Then they write a book. The book will have epic insights inside the book. Then they create mini conferences where they bring people in. Those mini conferences create their initial fans. Then they get fan tributes from those initial fans. Then they spread those fan tributes out to the greater, wider audience in the knowledge that they now achieved a 2 times improvement in what their Google ad performance is going to be. You don't have a choice. You have to do it. Okay. So I like that. So cool. I like it. Another great comment from Jim. This is good. This is fun. I like this when it's a conversation and we have a good conversation about actually what it's looking like. So even you do a poor job speaking at an event, you gain EQ. It's so true. Look, I was a dumbass. I've been around entrepreneurship for years. I have failed horribly at some stuff, and I've done pretty good on some other things. I would say when I started being a VC, I was like worst VC ever. I was so clueless. It was ridiculous. And then over a period of time, like 2 things happen. One, you invest in 300 companies, so you get less bad and more good. And then number 2, you speak about what's happening. Like even today, as I'm talking about this, it focuses my mind on the areas I want to work on. So you got to speak wherever you can, wherever you can. And the more you speak about it, the more you think about what you say, the more people give you feedback on it, the better you become. It's just as simple as that. Life experiences become talking experiences become learning experiences. And then you take that to build better life experiences. Simple as that. So I don't really want to give you much more today, honestly. You have 3 examples. Actually, you have 4 examples in a week and a half of me, not me outsourcing, me speaking and being at events when there are thousands of other VCs out there that have much bigger funds than ours, that are far more successful than we are, that have been around for 50 years, not 5 years. And they're not speaking. But I'm getting speaking gigs. Why? Because I'm putting my hand up and going out there. Second thing you're learning is have something to say. Interesting. Be interesting. Remember, stories are what make people move. I'm actually going to do a separate session on storytelling and how you can build out incredible stories. And I'm going to use like some great storytelling legends who have done it. But like have something interesting to say. Number three, lean into every speaking opportunity you possibly can, unless it's going to cause a fight. Don't fight, right? I will do fight if you me, but like not physical fights, right? But lean into every speaking opportunity you possibly can and decide. And my final point on this, number four, is decide what your objectives are. Like, how does it tie into your greater objective of either building up your domain dominance, which is getting you closer to a Series A round? If you're a venture backable founder, if you're not a venture backable founder and you're building revenue, how do you build more revenue on what you're building to actually be able to get to that next level of being able to build that Horizon 3 product? And so I love this. So there's some like really fantastic feedback that I've got here. I'll take you down. And what I want to do now is like finish with my epic insight that will kind of leave you with something to go from. You already have the events, which kind of are like the epic insight, but I want to bring it back to what I said at the very beginning, which is if you're looking at what investors are going to be investing in today, there's like the number one easy piece. If you have trajectory, which is growing, so you're going to be in good shape. So the reason I do this, the reason I want to showcase you founders that are doing like amazing stuff is because you actually get to take away some really useful and important content from it. And you're like, okay, Brian, I get it. I have to grow. I have to get to that 200% growth. I got to get to 10, 20K a month. And then I get to the 200% growth. And then all investors are going to take notice because they know that that is the path to actually being able to drive real revenue. Okay, and being able to get real investment from it. The second piece, though, is those four pieces that I mentioned. Think about it. Like, we invested in Swati because I knew she had execution power, right? It was being demonstrated to me through updates that she was sending over to me, telling me how she was engaging with her community, right? And how her community were growing. So even though the trajectory was not in the revenue because it wasn't there yet, it was in the community. There was execution proof in place, right? The second thing is I could see from what she was saying, and we only heard a little bit from her in the interview there, but she was already talking about how every single thing that happened to her was a reason for her to react to that in a different way and be able to evolve her company moving forward. There's only very few founders who can do that. Most founders, we get tunnel vision, right? And we're like, boom, 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 and we're trying to break our way through, and it's really hard, and we don't break our way through. We just get really sore knuckles because we're hitting our fists off the wall in the same place at the same time. So be able to step back and use your emotional intelligence to be able to work out, rather than just this linear way forward where you maybe would have gone before, how can you go way outside the box? That involves asking people around you. It involves looking at things from different perspectives. It involves getting deeply engaged with your customers to ask your customers. Like, there's a ton of ways that you can do it, but you have to do it. You have absolutely no choice, right? Number three is, remember when I said about her building her community? Like, she focused on her community first. I actually spoke to a founder, one of our founders in Web3, and he said, look, when we launched a token, if we could redo our token today, we would have built our community first. That was the biggest challenge we had. We allowed all these KOL jackasses to come in and actually direct our token's trajectory. And that meant that we didn't have loyalty. Doing it again, we will build loyalty so that we can build success based on the back of that loyalty. Remember, loyalty builds fans. Fans will build fan tributes. Fan tributes will then build referrals to other people, and that will bring people into you because people see that you're serving from an authentic place. Very, very similar to what we do and what I do over here, right? And then the final piece for Swati was just that, like, for her, she was able to show that she had a product which had a huge market size. And again, she didn't go into it, but her product is all about gut health. You know, our gut is our health. If we take care of our gut, the rest of us, generally speaking, all feeds from it. Everything, heart disease, cancer, all kinds of things, they all start in the gut. Take care of our gut, and the rest of our body takes care of us. And so I knew that the world was in a place that this was going to become incredibly important, because the gap of very uneducated group of people, a new innovation that's coming through, and a new awareness of what needed to happen, aligned with a market of just a monster around people, was very obvious to me. But she helped with that by showcasing it. So just say to yourself, how much are you engaging with your investors to do that? Okay, that's it. We covered tons. We didn't cover Swati, but we covered tons of other things. Go out there. Look, do me a favor, will you? I would love if somebody came back here next week and they're like, Brian, I just arranged an epic event. It was absolutely huge. We had like this, and this happened, and this is what the outcome was. And actually, let me change one word, not event, production. Epic production. It can be anything. Be creative. Domain dominance is the only place that you can go. And the only way to get there is to build epic events. Okay, go out there. Have an amazing week. Again, my thoughts and prayers are with everybody on this Memorial Day. God bless all of you, and everybody else. Keep safe out there. For early stage founders, go out there and dominate. Take the market away from your competitors and do it in a way that you feel great about the fact that it was you who made it happen. Okay, that's a wrap, my friends.